Hey, Folkland, before we jump into today's show in the NFC West, I want to tell you about The Secret to Victory. It's a new podcast from Gatorade and Gimlet Creative about how the best athletes in the world use defeat to fuel a win. This week, you'll hear from Serena Williams about being on the wrong side of the biggest upset in her sport and how it drove her to come back stronger than ever. Visit Gatorade.com/podcast to listen now or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, it's Martavis Bryant, a.k.a. Martin McBride.
Hey, this is Fred Jackson.
This is Hall of Famer Marshall Faulk.
Hey, this is Allen Robinson. Hey, this is Amir Abdullah.
Hey, this is Willie Sneed.
Hey, this is David Johnson.
Hey, this is Christian Michael. Hi, this is Eric Dixon, NFL Hall of Famer, and you're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the Play Draft Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
It's Friday.
It's Friday.
We have cut the ribbon, the fantasy football and NFL seasons.
It has begun.
It has begun. I'll be at the Hall of Fame game.
So Hall of Fame.
Is it wrong of me to admit that I did not watch that game in its entirety?
I did not watch a single snap of it. It's the Hall of Fame game, man.
Yeah,
It's
when
really
the coaches are like, I don't want this game, I don't care about this game.
It's hard listening to Chris Collinsworth and Al Michaels commentate that game. You know, like you're
it's
having
hard for them to commentate.
You're having to make a lot out of, a third string player on the first snap.
I hear
the
there was a
game.
lot of excitement for Blaine Gabbert.
He did look good. I actually did watch the game.
He
fellas.
torched those fifth-string defenders.
He's got a strong arm, and when nobody is playing defense and they're really bad defenders, he's okay. He's pretty good.
I mentioned Rico Gathers in the studio a few days ago.
You did.
He's very large, 6'6", 290, couple great catches, 3 for 59 and a touchdown. Bryce Butler flashed a little bit. We've seen him do that before in the preseason. Those were kind of the headliners for me. I mean, not a lot of work for Chad Williams. Nice to see him on the field. Lots more to come preseason-wise. I obviously look forward to weeks 1, 2, and 3 of the preseason for a chance to kind of pass the eye test. But Mike obviously saw enough from Rico Gathers to throw him onto his dynasty roster this morning. And Jason Witten, he's not going to be here forever despite what he'll tell you.
That was exactly my thinking, and I had a burner spot. Might as well throw him on.
All right, great quick question of the day coming in off of Twitter. By the way, you can follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. Follow Mike at FF Hitman. Follow Jason at JasonFFL. You can follow me at Andy Holloway, and the website is thefantasyfootballers.com. We welcome you in to another episode. We are 5 days a week now, so make sure you subscribe, leave us those iTunes reviews. We're going to do another giveaway that's related to those honest iTunes reviews, so we appreciate them. They help the show. All right, guys. Quick question of the day is commissioner related, okay? This one comes in off of Twitter from Eric. He says, what are some basic tips for a first-time commissioner to have a quality league? So simple question. What are some tips and tricks we can give to first-time commissioners to help them enjoy, make a more enjoyable league, do things the right way, not end up in a bad situation?
Don't limit roster transactions.
Oh, mercy me.
That's my hot tip.
That's important. I mean, don't get too cute with things. Especially as a first-time commissioner. If you're wanting to put all these crazy, wacky rules in, don't do that. For me, it's more about the people. I mean, a great fantasy football league is great because you have awesome people there and you're communicating.
They're active.
They're active because they're connected. So make sure you have a good communication channel, whether that's Slack or Facebook or Sleeper Bot or what. Find a channel where the people in your league will actually be involved. They'll check, they'll communicate, wherever it is. But that's
it's a place to react
critical.
to trades, to talk about things, to trash talk. I'll add to that, don't feel the pressure as a first-time commissioner to have a 12-team league. Maybe you want a 12-team league. Maybe that's not realistic with the amount of people that you know that want to play. Better to have a solid 8 or 10-team league with good owners than a 12-team league with 2 or 3 bad apples that are going to ruin the experience for everybody. Or, and I say bad apple, I don't even mean people that are necessarily in there to destroy your league. I'm talking about, somebody that goes inactive in week 3, and then the league is not as engaging for everybody. So I think that's a few solid tips for everybody.
And, of course, tell your entire league about this show, right? Because then everybody becomes better, and it's just more fun.
Of course.
That's the narrative.
Right?
News and notes from around the league.
I should have hit the hype train button right there. That would have been smart. All right, we talked about the Hall of Fame game as much as we're going to talk about it. Let's talk about Ryan Tannehill on the show yesterday. Now, we got to keep our eyes peeled because the last 2 shows that we've done, we had a Sterling Shepard injury and then we had a Ryan Tannehill injury. Right now, the Dolphins have gone from optimism to fear that Tannehill's going to need season-ending surgery. The reality for him is because he rehabbed without surgery the first time, and because this seems to be a re-aggravation of the ACL, MCL partial tears, the likely outcome is if that happens to be the case and he's seeking a second opinion, he'll go under the knife. They'll take care of this once and for all because he doesn't want to rehab for what I've seen is 6 to 8 weeks to just come back and have the same thing happen again.
No, and how can you have faith in your knee? If you're Ryan Tannehill, this happened. This is going to be in your head now.
And he's generally been a very mobile quarterback. That's part of his game is getting outside the pocket, being able to throw on the run. So disappointing. There are a lot of rumors in regards to who they might bring in. Matt Moore would take over the job out of the gate. Colin Kaepernick been rumored about maybe coming in as a backup.
For all 32 teams.
All 32 teams. And then there's been discussion.
Smoking Jay Cuddy.
That's the best one.
Oh, yeah.
A source has reported that Jay Cutler whispered into the void, hey, I may come back. I'd play for Adam Gase again. But to me, it's Matt Moore. He was a competent, perfectly capable quarterback towards the end of the season last year. And honestly, for me, it's pretty much lateral from Tannehill to Matt Moore as far as fantasy purposes are concerned.
It's kind of like when Josh McCown takes over for somebody.
Yeah.
You
still get production.
You still get
fantasy.
production. He's willing to take shots down the field. I think it caps the upside of the overall offense. I think that's why bringing in a guy like Cutler is potentially attractive to them because he's worked with Adam Gase, and there's an opportunity.
So has Matt Moore.
For some upside. Let's talk about Joe Mixon. If you want a microcosm of the entire offseason, just look at the Joe Mixon news that has broke over the last 24 hours. You had an initial report from a beat writer. Joe Mixon's going to get 20-plus touches in week 1. And 10 minutes later, he had to hurt himself. He's off the field. Reports are good, by the way. Foot injury, it sounds like it's a bruised heel. He could have returned. He's just recovering, so that's a short-term thing. And then this morning, Jeremy Hill, going to be the starter to start the year, is the report. So good luck parsing through all of that. This is the reality that fantasy owners face when buying into some of these rookie running backs. And it is a challenge.
Hype is difficult to track, but the one thing that we need to separate from that and acknowledge is just true is that there are 3 legitimate NFL starting caliber running backs on that team.
2.5. I'm only giving Jeremy Hill a half.
That's crazy coming from you, but I can
new information, man.
I could see that, but my point is this:
half a yard per carry.
Yes. You can get the hype on Jeremy Hill. A couple days ago, hype on Gio Bernard, just in the fact that he was able to be there and he's recovered. The hype on Mixon. You can't let any of those win based on hype. You have to see something on the field because there's too many mouths to feed there.
Gio is not hype. Gio is fact. He's healthier than we thought he was. He's not missing the first 2 games of the year. That does affect. I have a long list of guys I'm messing with the rankings a little bit, moving them around. I'm moving Mixon down a little bit. I have him, I think, at 19 right now. He's going to drop a little bit because of Gio's health predominantly, but the report on Jeremy Hill's involvement doesn't help that situation. And all that being said, that does not mean look at last year. Jordan Howard, right? He wasn't the full-time starter for a while. And there were other backs there that, they weren't that good, but it took him some time.
Well, it took a Langford injury.
Yeah,
and really what it took.
There's no question in my mind that, Fournette, Cook, Mixon, maybe P. Ryan, maybe Hunt, there is going to be a monster fantasy impact from one of those guys. And specifically with Mixon, that could be weeks 4 through 16, or it could be weeks 8 through 16.
Right.
He still might be worth a pretty high draft pick if
But
you
a
have
third?
if you have the depth and you think that by the end of this year, over the last 8 weeks, he's a top 5 guy. You have to buy that.
But if you're talking week 8 for a third-round pick to hold on to him.
No, and that's why I think we said, moving him down a little bit. So not a third-round pick.
Well,
but
that's where he's going to go in
okay,
drafts.
let me give you this then. What if I told you, hypothetically, that you have to spend a third-round pick for the number 1 running back over the last 8 weeks of the year? That's hypothetical. I'm not projecting Mixon. But what if that was the situation? You've got to spend your third, but you got the number 1 running back in football over the last 8 weeks.
So
you just
basically,
don't get
you're
him.
saying like
It's an 8-game suspension, basically.
let's say Le'Veon Bell is suspended for 8 games.
There you go.
Hypothetically, and then would you spend a third-round pick on him?
I bet you would.
For the last.
I think I would if I have.
You of all people, I feel like would take that shot, Mike.
I think I would if I had a deep bench.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a 5.
Well, you don't know if you have a deep bench until you draft him first.
Oh, yeah, I
No,
think
you're
he just
right.
means
I'm saying on
numerically speaking.
Yes, I'm saying right.
I see. I thought you meant like your own roster. I'm like, how do you know how deep your bench is?
I've seen the future.
No, I'm saying if I've got 5 and under bench spots on my in that league, then I don't want to take up 1/5 of my ability to make transactions for 8 weeks. I that's what I was saying.
Mixon's going to be a very risky pick.
Risky but rewarding.
Yeah, very, very high risk.
No risk it, no biscuit. All right, Donte Moncrief suffered a sprained AC joint in his shoulder on Thursday.
He just didn't want to be without Luck. It's like, Luck's not doing it. I'm not doing it.
That doesn't seem to be the case with Moncrief. He's willing to be hurt at any time, at any place. Unfortunate.
That's his secret.
Yeah.
He's always injured.
Well, it stinks.
Yeah,
because
it sucks.
There are a number of players like this. By the way, I don't know if I've seen the sentiment on a player change the way it has on Carlos Hyde in the last week.
Oh!
I mean, did you foresee that? I mean, you were down on him.
No.
You were progressively going down on your ranking of Carlos Hyde.
He's always stayed in that mid-2 range for me, though.
Okay. Well, the sentiment has been very positive.
And I've always stayed on he is the best running back on the team.
Yeah. Well, you get credit for that then because it's looking really, really good for Carlos Hyde. So, we ready to get into the NFC West? Any other news you guys want to talk about?
Only if we get to talk more Carlos Hyde.
Dang it, we do.
Let's get divisional.
All right, we're in the NFC West. This is the last of our divisional breakdown shows. We're kind of hitting the highlights, the fantasy notes, the fantasy news for each of these franchises. And we'll start with the Seattle Seahawks, 10-5-1 last year. That epic tie they had with the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh.
I want to talk about Russell Wilson, or as we call him,
Russell.
All right, Russell Wilson. I'm so confused because every single season he's played, so all 5, he's ended up a top 12 QB at the end of the year. Over the last 3 years, I took a look at how often he's a top 12 QB week to week, and it's gone down each of the last 3 years. He was 62% of the time in 2014, only 56% of the time the year after, and then last year 43% of the time. So it's not been the uptrend that you'd hope for a consistent quarterback one. Obviously, it's hard to produce those kind of numbers each and every week. But he ended the year with 6 of 9 weeks in the top 12. The narrative is obviously, look, he was hurt. He couldn't get out of the pocket. He couldn't do what he does. Right now he's being drafted in the 7th round, late 7th round, behind guys like Derek Carr. So what do you think about Russell Wilson and his opportunity this year in Seattle?
Well, that narrative you're talking about, that's in the nonfiction.
Right.
I mean, because that's what happened. The guy, his ankle got absolutely destroyed right away, and then he was dealing with another one. By the end of it, he looked like a mummy with his feet. I mean, and that's what Russell Wilson's game is all about: is
being a mummy. Oh,
being a mummy, returning from the dead. No, he's just mobility. I mean, that spin move when he baits the defender to come in, and then he just spins. And someone breaks wide open like Doug Baldwin, and that's where his production comes from. And if he cannot move, and his offensive line was just trash last year. I mean,
they've been bad for a while. I was going to say what has always made up for their poor offensive line is Russell Wilson's mobility in the
Yes.
pocket. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. It's not just some kind of story. 2 years ago, you had a bad first half for Russell Wilson and a great second half. That was a narrative where it was like, oh, he got better or something changed, or when Marshawn Lynch went down, maybe that's why he was, more productive. But last year
Doug Baldwin wanted to get paid is what happened.
Yeah, last year it was absolutely 100%. He was injured in the beginning of the year. And if you go to the UDK and you look at last year's week by week consistency chart ranking, you said he was 43% of the time, something like that.
Yeah, he was 43% of the time at top 12 last year.
Yeah, all but one of those came after week 8. I mean, so you look and it's like, oh, it was really bad in the beginning and then it was just on fire.
But isn't
once he could
that,
move.
I mean, don't we have to acknowledge as fantasy owners, look, because of the mobility, because of what he does, his potential to be injured, to be hurt, bad offensive line got him hurt, right? It's not a point in his favor for him to be injured and struggle and have a bad offensive line, but then he came back and was Russell Wilson. Isn't there an injury risk that maybe places him in this late 7th appropriately versus saying he deserves to be ahead of that? Because not every player is in that kind of a situation, exposed to injury. It wasn't just one injury either. Like, it wasn't just one thing that happened. He got hurt. I believe one was a knee, one was an ankle. So
yeah, but it's just that they all lead to each other when he can't move. But I wouldn't consider Russell Wilson injury prone.
Yeah, we haven't seen it
stretch.
in previous years. It's not like the years before he's been getting injured constantly. So I think it's a valid point in the sense that he takes a lot of sacks. He does.
Yes, he does.
He's up near the leaders in the league if he's not the leader himself. And so injury risk is there for anybody, but I think we've got a big enough body of work with his mobility and his,
So are you taking him there? Do you want him at 708?
Yeah, I genuinely, he is one of the first guys where I start considering him. Not at 7, but when he drops past where his normal value is. If he's, if you're in a league where people draft quarterbacks later, you can get Russell Wilson in the 9th, and I'll pull the trigger on that.
What's his ceiling?
It's top 5.
Yeah, I would say top 3. I mean, you've got a guy who now has weapons with Jimmy Graham. If Tyler Lockett gets back, there's, I think Darboh, the rookie, has potential. Paul Richardson has potential. We've never had this large of a core of quality receivers there. You've always been relying on Jermaine Kearse as your number 2 wide receiver, and that's hard to
It's
be
interesting,
productive.
though, because I know the injury is there, but you do have that decreasing stat, 62%, 56%, 43%, and his rushing yards have gone down 3 straight years as well. I mean, it's really easy to have a 62% as a QB1 when you have 800-plus yards on the ground. Those baselines change if you're no longer running the ball as much. So do you expect him to have 500 yards on the ground?
Yeah.
Because last year was about 250 with the injury, so –
Yeah, I mean 400 to 500,
Okay.
I think
All right.
is fair. And what do you do, Jason? You have been the man at the front. You are the conductor of Doug Baldwin's hype train. How are you
I want to
feeling-
talk about this.
How are you feeling about Doug Baldwin moving into this season? I mean, last year was,
It was a bad year.
well. He was still fine. Like, I mean,
And by the
end, but getting the journey was
he doesn't get
it's
enough
a rocky road.
Yeah, he doesn't get enough. I'll say the word credit, but
Say
it's
third-
really
he's
flack.
Too much credit now.
He doesn't get enough flack for being a boom bust the way you always hear that with Brandon Cooks and Amari Cooper and those guys. Doug Baldwin, for some reason, probably because he's up near the 90 reception total, you think of him as a consistent guy, but he really is not for fantasy. He has been a boom bust, a touchdown reliant player for those big games.
7 games out of the top 50 at the wide receiver position. 7 games. 31% of the time he was a wide receiver 1, which is lower than Brandon LaFell. So the sum of all parts equaled this number 10 finish in half-point leagues. But Jason's right. You look at him, and for some reason, the credit, he's getting the opposite of what he's always had. He had disrespect. Now he's basically at the end of the second round. In some leagues, I have him at 302 right now. So top of the third round, I don't want that. I don't want that from a guy who has to have that boom game. I just would rather take other players around there. I mean, Terrell Pryor's around there.
I was going to say,
I will take him.
For Jason, Brandon Cooks or Doug Baldwin?
I would take Brandon Cooks for sure.
Hopkins or Baldwin?
Baldwin.
Terrell Pryor.
Baldwin.
And the last one, Sammy Watkins.
Sammy Watkins.
All right.
Sounds like he's in the right spot for
you.
you.
It sounds like his price is fair for ADP for Jason.
You just need to be aware of what you're getting and not have the wrong, because more important than rankings is roster construction. When you go and you draft Doug Baldwin, you need to know you're getting more of a boom bust guy. You're getting a guy who can have, the 3-touchdown game that he had last year, but also keep in mind he only scored a touchdown in 5 games. Yeah, that's not good for a wide receiver in that range. Now, I credit some of his struggles to the Russell Wilson injury. That's why I don't think he's going to be as busty. We'll call him.
Let's not call him that.
he won't bust the same rate in 2017.
Oh,
I don't believe.
I can see a new shirt. Okay, key additions to the Seahawks team: Eddie Lacy. The offensive line is completely fixed now with Luke Jokel in the mix. Blair Walsh joins the squad. Let's talk about best. Look, who's the guy that you say ends up with the most fantasy points at the wide receiver position other than Doug Baldwin? Just give me a name.
At the wide receiver position?
That is correct. Who's the highest scoring wide receiver outside of Doug Baldwin at the end of the season? Who do you bet on that being?
Tyler Lockett.
Tyler Lockett.
All right, I'll go. I'm going to say Paul Richardson. He was very, very impressive at the end of the year.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And Tyler Lockett had that really nasty broken was the ankle. I mean, it was a foot injury.
I think it was his heart.
It was
a broken heart.
But Tyler Lockett is a very impressive player, and I think he was.
I was really surprised on the Footcast yesterday over at jointhefoot.com. I was surprised to hear how bullish both of you are on Lockett.
Bullish is the wrong word. I'm not bullish
optimistic.
on Lockett. And I wouldn't even say I mean, maybe I'm optimistic, but what I was saying is that he still has the potential to break free. His reception perception has shown that he's a quality receiver. He last year, towards the end of the year, I think he had 2 top 3 wide receiver.
Well, in the beginning of the year, he was hurt.
Right.
If you remember, he had a knee injury, and that's when Jimmy Graham was doing all that damage.
Yeah, so it's not a calling for or a projecting him to be there, but it is absolutely I acknowledge that he has the potential to be a relevant guy. I don't think I've drafted him in a single league yet this year.
Supposed to come off the pup in the next couple of days. We'll be practicing again with the team. Last guy I want to mention, Jimmy Graham. Where do you guys have Jimmy Graham this season? Does he have top 3 tight end potential? A year removed from his first campaign after the patellar tendon. Very impressive year. Looks like right now we have Jimmy Graham 6, 4, and 6. So Mike and I have him at 6. Jason, you have him at 4. So touch on Jimmy Graham before we move on.
Yeah, I really like Jimmy Graham this year quite a bit. Now, he's one of those guys where come draft day, I don't like drafting a middle-of-the-pack, high potential tight end. But by year's end, I think he will be a top 5 tight end for sure. You have last year, you saw him struggle a little bit as the season got on, which is completely understandable for a guy who was coming off the injury he had. He shouldn't have even been able to play last year by, science, but he has proven that he is an elite tight end in the NFL. Defenders cannot stop him. And for him to come through in his first year with Seattle and produce as he did last year, there's no reason to doubt Jimmy Graham being in Seattle. None whatsoever.
Are you guys taking the 10th round shot on Thomas Rawls?
No.
Definitely. Happy to do it.
There's a very strong split.
At the running back position, we've talked about Lacy a lot on the show. I guess we can dive in real quick before we move on to the Cardinals. But yeah, I'm taking the shot at him. I mean, this guy was dynamic, and he had a very good end of the year. He had a 150-plus yard game towards the end of the season. They obviously know they can't rely on him to stay healthy, but there's no reason Thomas Rawls couldn't be heavily involved in this roster.
Would you rather
And by the way, Eddie Lacy news. The last 2 times he's had his weigh-ins, they've come out and said he met it. This weigh-in that he had 2 days ago, they will not tell anybody what happened.
Oh, I'm moving him down.
It looks like he didn't make it, is what I'm saying. So, I mean, one Eddie Lacy injury. Let's say Eddie Lacy isn't in the picture. I mean, Thomas Rawls shoots up the board.
Okay, so in the 10th round, these are running backs. These are free running backs. So, I mean, you're just taking a lotto ticket here, but you have to pick one of these scratchers. You're going Thomas Rawls, Jamal Williams, Jeremy Hill.
I'm going, assuming this is a normal, redraft league.
It's redraft.
I'm definitely going Jamal Williams.
I'm going Jamal Williams.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Arizona Cardinals last year were 7-8-1, disappointing. They were one of the early season favorites to potentially head to the Super Bowl or at least get in that NFC title game. Didn't happen last year. Lots of reasons why. But
Chandler Catanzaro is
that's
the reason
only
why.
way. You say it in jest, but in the beginning of that year,
No, it's fact.
he cost 3 games.
Yeah. Add 3 victories.
Carson Palmer. I heard a very interesting stat yesterday on Carson Palmer. Over the second half of the year when he played much, much better, he had the majority of his throws, 70-something% of his throws, came in under 2 seconds from the snap. And that number was...
That's a terrified man.
It was a game plan is what I'm saying. It wasn't terrified. It was a game plan change in the Cardinals offense. First half of the year, it was 4 seconds. So that wasn't just fear of being sacked. That was a short passing game was more involved, the utility of David Johnson, the ability. Look, they made adjustments. Carson Palmer, I've said it, he ended the year with a bunch of top 12 weeks. Is this team primed for a bounce back with Palmer, David Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, John Brown? What do you think about the potential fantasy-wise for the Arizona Cardinals? Really didn't lose any offensive pieces. Michael Floyd's out the door, but he didn't do anything. I mean, the grimace Mike just made shows the impact
he was
Michael
out the
Floyd
door
made
2 years ago.
So let's talk. 9th in the league in passing yards last year. Where do you see him, Jay?
Yeah, this team will be very reliant on John Brown because Carson Palmer to step forward. David Johnson's going to be fine. He's safe. But as a whole, if you want the offense to rebound to where it was a couple years ago, you need that burner, fast receiver option in a Bruce Arians system. And J.J. Nelson is not going to get it done.
As full-time. JJ,
yes, he'll have his games. If you're in a best ball, grab him. He can't. I don't think he can get it done. But the Cardinals do some really good stuff. I've been researching for Jaron Brown, who, if you want a super deep, a super deep flyer pick, I think Jaron Brown is a guy that is very valuable. He looked good before he tore his ACL. Right after he tore his ACL last year, they gave him a 1-year contract. After they said, hey, I want to make sure he sticks around. And there's this, how Baltimore is having just, death left and right.
Yeah.
And the Chargers for years as well I've been looking.
You're referring to injuries,
yes,
right?
I'm just saying the guys dropping like
it's
flies.
Death left and right.
It's not
That's what
going
it
well in
feels
Baltimore
like
right now.
as a fan, but the Cardinals have
the
implemented
purple
this.
plague.
The Cardinals have implemented this load system where they are using technology to track every single thing done, and once a player reaches whatever their load is, so like Jaron Brown right now is at a 300 load. When he reaches that, based on how much he's doing in practice, they shut him down and they say you're not allowed to do anything else. And they've done this. It's helping him. That's what they did to help Carson Palmer last year. Is they shut him down when you reach a certain load in practice, and that's why he got better the second half of the year. They're doing that. They didn't have that same kind of system to shut him down in the first half of the year. I believe that will help Carson Palmer quite a bit.
That's interesting stuff.
If Jaron Brown can John Brown, if he can get healthy with his legs, I do think there will be a bounce back for the offensive, totality for the Cardinals.
I think a lot of people want to know, is it Chad Williams, is it Jaron Brown in that wide receiver 3, DFS flyer, deep league role? Right now I would probably tell you it's Jerome Brown.
Yeah, I would agree.
Chad Williams, some reports of him being out of shape, not doing what he needed to do. So
I feel like for the Cardinals, John Brown is this last puzzle piece. So, but I'm talking like the kind of puzzle where when you put it in, there's just this, it all just lights up and glows because he helps Larry Fitzgerald be better. He helps Carson Palmer, David Johnson. They're so much reliant on John Brown, and they have no other player of that caliber. So if John Brown is still struggles with his sickle cell trait, then I think that's big problem.
I completely agree, and let's be honest, I think he is struggling with it. And if I had
that's not good.
No, it's not. So I said all those rosy things that could come true for the Cardinals, but if I had to put my expectation as to whether or not John Brown will succeed, not if he can, and if he does, I think he will go full ham. But I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to be able to be healthy this season.
That's a really stupid end to that story.
Yes. Sorry, America.
Wow. I mean, that was as sad as it gets.
He's had two different leg injuries.
So you don't think
offseason.
You don't think Williams, you don't think Brown can step in and make enough of an impact to give you that boost you're talking about?
That's right. I do.
All right, David Johnson. We know his story.
It's pretty good.
You draft him at the top. Larry Fitzgerald, do we expect the same from him? This is a guy who led the league in receptions last year. Number one.
I don't expect him to be number one, but he'll be a tremendous PPR guy, has the weekly upside where he can drop 2 touchdowns, but he's similar to Doug Baldwin that we were talking about, where the end of the season numbers are going to look better than the actual week to week.
Look for a hot start, in my opinion, for the Arizona Cardinals on offense. They play Detroit, Indy, Dallas, San Francisco the first 4 weeks.
That's a good
Philly after that,
start.
Tampa after that. You don't see that kind of gauntlet of defensive teams. We'll see what happens.
That makes Carson Palmer
very interesting late round streamer.
Very, very interesting because he's not likely you're not likely to stream. If you grab Palmer, because then you're going to grab a new quarterback off the waiver wire who has a good matchup, you go, oh, well, guess what? That's Carson Palmer again and again and again.
All right, let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams because they're in this division, and we're talking about all the teams in this division. Before we do that, I want to remind people, if you want all of this consistency data, the week-to-week consistency, career charts, consistency percentages like I've been breaking down where, I was telling you Russell Wilson was a top 12 QB 43% of the time. Those are all new features in this year's Ultimate Draft Kit at ultimatedraftkit.com. This is the time to get in there, dominate your draft, put yourself in the position to, we say set the foundation of your team. Jason says you don't win your league at the draft, but you sure as heck set the foundation for what you're doing the rest of the year.
You can lose it at the draft.
No doubt. Yeah, you make the wrong move at the draft, but the right move, that can set you up for the season. Even things like what we're talking about there with Carson Palmer maybe being an early season streaming candidate. You can dive in there, 100-plus player profiles.
Video profiles.
Matt Harmon's reception perception is in there, brand new this year. A lot of good feedback on the UDK, so always happy to answer your questions in regards to that, and you can check it out at ultimatedraftkit.com. Let's talk about the Rams, 4-12 last year. For better or for worse, they have to put this franchise in the hands of Jared Goff at this point. Sean McVay comes in, replaces Jeff Fisher. I think everybody looks at that, hey, it couldn't have gotten much worse on the offensive side of the ball than Jeff Fisher had produced for that roster. Todd Gurley, very disappointing year. Out the door, key subtractions. No more Kenny Brett. No more Lance Kendricks. Brian Quick's gone. Benny Cunningham's gone. They bring in Robert Woods. They bring in Andrew Whitworth, big left tackle signing, graded out as the second best left tackle in the league last year.
He's a beast.
He is a beast. So that seems to bode well for both protecting Goff and Todd Gurley, who struggled last year to break off the big play. In his rookie season, I believe he had 8 plays of 25 or more yards. Last year, despite finishing the year still as a top 18 running back, zero runs of 25-plus yards. That killed you as a fantasy owner because you did not have those ceiling type of games. Because we have so many new listeners to the show joining in right now, I want to reiterate, double down here. I am very, very optimistic about Todd Gurley this year. I think he offers fantasy owners a top 5 potential player at a good value. I know you guys are not on board with that, and that's fine, but I did want to let people know I'm very excited about the Sean McVay offense, about Todd Gurley being involved in the passing game for 40-plus receptions. Do you guys want to talk about the running game, what you see there?
You know, have to talk about Todd Gurley.
Well, do it. Do it then.
And I'm not nearly as optimistic as Andy. I don't think that he's bad by any stretch. It could be a situation of last year, just the team was so bad that he's trying too hard and he's not letting the game come to him. Could also be the fact that Jeff Fisher was trying to play 1979 football, just failing over and over at it without bothering to switch things up with the play calling. But the Rams are going to still be a bad team. I mean, Jared Goff I don't think is ready to start carrying this team yet. And it's so a low-scoring team. The offensive line has gotten better, so that's a check mark for Todd Gurley. But it all comes down to the draft cost of Todd Gurley, which you're not paying a top 3 pick for him this year, but you're still going to have to draft him in the first 3 rounds or so. And I think that the range of outcomes for Todd Gurley is just that running back 2 area.
I love Todd Gurley.
I noticed that you have him apparently higher than me in the rankings.
Yeah, and I
didn't know anybody could do that.
I
what
want
is
that
happening right now?
No, listen, I want that to not get misconstrued.
Can you cut that clip of I love Todd Gurley out, Brooks? I want it on my board right now. And if I could slow clap.
Want it not. No, you're not going to like everything else I have to say.
Todd Gurley or Lamar Miller? I just want to check something.
Right now,
quick.
it's Todd Gurley. That just changed in my rankings. I actually did put Todd Gurley over Lamar Miller. But hear me out. You do not
Jason is the best analyst.
You do not move
show.
Todd Gurley up to an elite running back. You do not take him at the top of the second round. You do not take him over DeMarco Murray and known assets. That I do not expect Todd Gurley to have a top 5 season. Now, is that in his range of outcomes? Yes, I think it is in the range of outcomes. I put that at a low probability. But here's what I love about Todd Gurley. He is mid to late second round. He is near the Isaiah Crowells. His value at that point in the draft is a floor that is what you saw last year, which is, the RB15, the RB16, 17.
Talent,
yeah, I mean,
volume, opportunity.
I mean, I'm just saying for where he's going.
Have you just described Carlos Hyde?
Maybe.
All right.
So
yeah, if you like Carlos Hyde on that team, we haven't talked about them yet.
Yeah, we haven't got there yet.
They
finished
finished worse than
I mean,
the Rams.
And Carlos Hyde was finished higher in the fantasy rankings in 13 games.
That is true.
Than Todd Gurley.
I mean, look, I'm not saying Todd Gurley is a great back. I'm not, but his volume is locked and loaded.
Yes.
Barring injury, there's no way, just like I had said, a couple weeks ago on Lamar Miller, there's no way he doesn't get 250 carries and 30-plus receptions. I just can't fathom that not happening. And so if he sucks, which I think there's a good probability he will suck, he is going to be he's going to be okay as your RB2. I mean, nobody should be unhappy with that kind of production as your second running back. If you can get you can get Shady in the first and Todd Gurley in the second, that's what I'm saying.
How bad was last year, Mike, for Todd Gurley?
Bad.
13 of 16 weeks in the top 30. And
top 30 for a guy who was taken
right. That was the problem.
The top 3 pick.
He was
nine
the first pick
of those
half
weeks. So I said 13. 9 of them he was top 24. He was still an RB1 or 2 in those weeks. So if it's as bad as it gets, and that's the worst you get, I think that's the point Jason's making.
Jason went full Schrodinger's cat.
I don't know what
Todd
you're talking
Gurley
about.
just now. The cat is both dead and alive at the exact same time.
Yeah, sure. I'm playing. You can say I'm playing both sides of it.
You did. You just said.
I think I laid it out.
He could be great. He could be terrible. He's Todd Gurley.
Shoot
the confetti.
Do not move his ADP up. Do not take me saying he deserves to be higher than he is. What I'm saying is where he's at right now.
I don't know where you stay.
where he's at right now, I will take him in the draft.
Okay.
I like that pick of Todd Gurley in the mid to late second round.
And I will pass.
Will you pass to Robert Woods?
Robert Woods he's interesting. It's what I like about the hire of McVay. He's going to bring
14th round pick. He's a free Robert Woods with no Kenny Britt, who had 1,000 yards last year. And
Robert Woods is not Kenny Britt.
No, but the Robert Woods is very good. I've always said he passed the eye test to me.
Yeah, and I think he's a good wide receiver.
I think he's their best wide receiver.
But we got to see what Sean McVay is going to bring in with the West Coast offense. I have my eye on Cooper Kupp. I'm not drafting Cooper Kupp, but just watching him the first few weeks because I think he fits the offensive scheme so perfectly.
Woods, Kupp, Austin. Put them in order.
Woods, Austin, Kupp.
Yeah, that's probably the way I lean as well. And then just to touch quickly on the tight ends, my man Gerald Everett, Mount Everett. I don't think that this is the year that it happens. I mean, the reports are that Tyler Higbee is still competing. But
Hey, Brooks. Tyler Higbee, you hear that? He can do it.
But Gerald Everett was the very first selection in Sean McVay's coaching career. So, and he was the one behind the magic of Jordan Reed's play calling. So
wasn't Tim Tebow McDaniel's first selection in the?
Yeah,
that's a pretty good response, Andy.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
Hey, if you want to know what direction the Rams need to head offensively, 31st in the year, 31st in rushing, 31st in passing, 32nd in points per game, 30th in total plays run, and that's an important stat
what you're
for
saying
fantasy football.
They can get worse. They still have like one or two spots to move down.
So,
yeah,
okay, but
they definitely can. I mean, if you
just 31st in rushing yards, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
With Jeff Fisher.
Just remember that when we move to the next team.
Now
Oh gosh.
Now, real quick, one thing that is
can we skip San Francisco for? I
Nope.
can't take it.
But Mike, you do have to understand they had one of the worst offensive lines imaginable, and Andrew Whitworth, the second ranked.
Yeah,
left
it's a
tackle
big
coming.
upgrade.
That's a huge upgrade for them. So,
All right, let's talk about the 2-14 San Francisco 49ers. They bring in Kyle Shanahan, new head coach, long-term deal. Bring in Pierre Garçon, Marquise Goodwin. Bring in Kyle Juszczyk, Pro Bowl fullback. Bring in Tim Hightower. Goodbye, Torrey Smith, Colin Kaepernick, Blaine Gabbert, Sean Drone. A lot of turnover, long-term plan in place for San Francisco. How does that translate to fantasy value? We've all seen Brian Hoyer give fantasy value to wide receivers despite generally playing in really bad situations. He had a bad break last year. He was coming out and basically lighting things on fire for Chicago.
Yeah.
Now you have Hoyer, you have Hyde, and the whole backfield discussion with Hightower now. He had first-team reps a couple times. Joe Williams is in that backfield. And then the aforementioned Pierre Garçon. So what is the headline for you? What are you watching for with the San Francisco 49ers? Mike brings up the point. Last year they were 4th in the league in rushing. That had a lot to do with Kaepernick in total rushing yardage. But 32nd in passing, that's got to change. Give me the San Francisco narrative. You said you like Pierre Garçon.
Yeah, I love Pierre Garçon. He following Kyle Shanahan. He's coached Pierre Garçon before. He wanted to get Pierre Garçon on his team, and
he paid up.
I mean, yeah, he reached the limit of paying where he said, "You're going to come finish your career on a rebuild." And Pierre Garçon said, "Okay." He'll be the wide receiver one, and led the league in receptions the last time he played with Kyle Shanahan. Now, I'm not calling for that, but that's happened before. That is actual history.
A ton of receptions is definitely in the equation.
Yes, and lots of negative game scripts for the San Francisco 49ers as they try and rebuild, which I think that speaks positively for Pierre Garçon, who has actually, the last time I checked, was climbing the ADP. I mean, he's in standard leagues. He's now in the 8th round, which by the time drafts are really rolling, do you think that Pierre Garçon makes his way up into the 6th round?
I doubt it. I don't know if there's enough hype with that offense that would push him that high. I love Pierre Garçon. I traded significant dynasty. I made a dynasty trade and pushed for him because I feel like he is just such a complimentary piece to a fantasy roster, because any given week You can roll him in. I feel like he's going to have a safe floor. And this is a team that, with Brian Hoyer, they'll be down a lot, and there'll be opportunities in garbage time for him to eat.
Yeah, and
Shanahan loves him.
True. What's unfortunate is I have spoken very positively of Brian Hoyer frequently on this show.
You have.
The last time Brian Hoyer was with Kyle Shanahan,
I love this stat.
It didn't go so well because it was in Cleveland, and I think he had like 12 passing touchdowns. It was bad.
Yeah, I mean, A plus B doesn't equal success, and they don't
it doesn't.
They don't have a good.
It equals AB, by the way, for the listeners.
Another thing I know nothing about.
Or Jason.
Wow, he wants a show now.
I
listen back. He thinks of them, and he starts to smile, and then he drops them.
That's fine.
I can see it from across the desk.
I have very thick skin, and I think that's the problem. They're really thick.
Oh, man.
We are best friends.
Jason and I are for sure. After all that nice stuff he said about Todd Gurley.
Don't you quote me wrong.
I'll quote you right.
He's
Number
got a high
10
floor.
on your rankings.
He's got a high floor.
Number 10. Beautiful. All right.
Pierre Garçon will be peppered with targets. I think he's a good value if he goes late in drafts. Carlos Hyde, we spoke about him a little bit earlier. He's a great – I mean, I've been picking him up in my play draft leagues for the last several months. I'm actually a little bit upset. I mean, I'm kind of, it's kind of nice to have the confirmation coming out, but now it's like, oh, great.
Now everyone's going to target him.
Yeah, I don't want him in the back of the second in the 2-3 turn. I want him when he was dropping to the fifth, and you got huge upside there.
Judge Giovani, can I ask you a quick question? Gurley or Lamar Miller? Out of curiosity, just totally random question. What do you got?
Oh, man.
You're on the spot. Gurley, Lamar Miller.
You got 3 seconds left to pick.
Gurley.
All right.
One of these things is not like the other.
I don't.
That's you. You're not like the rest of us.
Oh, yeah. I gladly stand on the other side of that.
I can't wait for the My Guys episode. Dibs.
Yeah, well, you'll easily have dibs
Dang
on
it, man.
Darn.
Todd Gurley is not a My Guy. I don't have.
You heard it here first. Jason's fighting me for Todd Gurley on the My Guys episode.
Best Ball Bonanza, brought to you by PlayDraft.
All right, once a week.
I noticed you cut off all my Carlos Hyde propaganda.
Did I?
Oh,
my gosh. I was
all
watching
right.
the clock. I will. I'll go back.
I'll summarize
hold
it
on.
really quick. He's
really good.
Excellent. He has a very good running back who can't stay healthy.
That's fair. 100% fair. If you look at his consistency chart, you look at the back half of the year, there's a lot of green all over it. He had very good finishes. If he can stay healthy, he'll have an opportunity to do some damage this year. And right now, the landscape behind him, Joe Williams started off slow. He would have been the guy to watch, I think, for a full shift in that offense. He would have had to come out on fire. Could still happen in preseason. Long way to go. Carlos Hyde might end up on some of my teams. Where he's being drafted right now, can't argue with you at all. So here's the deal. Once a week we do a short segment on best ball. And I feel like with all the new listeners we've got, August is beginning, I think it's a really good opportunity to kind of introduce people to what best ball leagues are. I think there's a lot of people that hear us say that. Either they're indifferent because they don't know what they are. Maybe they're curious.
If you've ever heard us
once
talk
a week
about,
we do this.
There's plenty of leagues that do best ball. The FFPC, the MFL 10s, Draft just came out with theirs this year, and that's my favorite because they finally, I've been calling for this forever, got rid of the kickers and defense in best ball. I've just always hated those. What best ball is the opposite of when I say you don't win championships at your draft. It's a fun way.
You only win at the draft.
You only win them in the draft. It's draft only. You have this awesome draft. Usually, you put a couple bucks in. You have a draft with other real people who are putting a couple bucks in, and then you can, at the end of the year, if your team, has the most points, you win the prize pool of money. And the way that the points are determined is basically it's as if every single week you made the perfect, most right start-sit decisions every single week. So your best lineup is getting in every week. And so one of my tips that I think is not said enough is do not discount consistency, because you the Martavis Bryants, the boom bust guys, you want the ceiling, and sometimes you overvalue the Deshaun Jacksons to the point where you go, well he can, that's great because I don't have to make the decision of is he going to get that long bomb touchdown or not. And so the guys that are consistent and have a really nice floor, the Demaryius Thomases, they drop in those drafts, and in reality, those are going to give you points they're going to crack your roster every single week. So what I would say is when you're constructing your roster in these formats, in the middle and high, rounds, consistency is great. Don't rely on the super boom bust until the late picks. That's where it's like I'm taking Kenny Stills late because you just need those crazy somehow break into my starting lineup.
If Matt Moore is the starting quarterback, Kenny Stills is going to be an amazing.
Well, clearly he'll have
pick.
16 touchdowns because he had, a touchdown in every single game that Matt Moore played last year.
You heard it here first. Kenny Stills, Jason's number one wide receiver.
Overall,
Todd Gurley, his number one running back. All right, Mike, tell the listeners where they can find. Mike does a live best ball draft with the listeners every single week. Invites you in just so you can kind of experience that. When are you doing those each week, Mike?
Those happen on Tuesday afternoon, and you can head to playdraft.com/ballers. Get your account already because I send the link out. You got to be quick draw McGraw on that thing because it fills up lickety split.
Yeah, and what you didn't say is when you go to playdraft.com/ballers, you get a free paid entry.
I did not say that.
So if you go there, you use our specific link, playdraft.com/ballers, you do get a free entry to try it out. And it's a lot of fun. It's great because you get to draft and then you put it out of your mind in the sense that you do your best in that draft and then you can just follow it during the week.
And it's on your phone. I mean, this is like they do have a web portal, but this is a mobile app, so you can just play in that special alone time wherever you are.
In other words, Jason drafts in the bathroom. That's exactly what that meant.
That's what it meant. I draft in the bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been a special show for you.
I do my best.
It has
really
been a unique one.
Yeah, it's been a busty show for some reason.
No,
I'm still carrying over from yesterday's Footcast where I got to run the show and we just went nuts.
Never again.
Oh, every time.
That was
please.
It was an adventure.
Please hit the music.
Yeah,
we got to get out of here.
All right, we'll see you later. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy your weekend. Andy, Mike, and Jason will be back with Judge Giamatti running the board on Monday. So take care. Have a good one.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.